Hi, my name's Phil. I like to come out politics. So why is Trump on Russia's side? Why is Trump trying to install a government he can control in Venezuela? People have all sorts of theories, and the reality could be a combination of all of them. But as is often the case with almost any type of obnoxious behaviour on the world stage, the answer can be as simple as oil or some other valuable resource, but it tends to be oil. Or Labubu's. People fight over Labubu's too. But mostly oil, except it's not quite as simple as some people may think. For example, nobody believes that Trump is giving Maduro a hard time because of the threat of drugs making their way to America. The majority of deaths from illicit drugs in the USA are not related to drugs from South America. Also, if Trump had any interest in tackling the scourge of drugs, he'd have tied Space Karen up in a straitjacket and dumped him into a rehab centre by now. It's also clear that Trump isn't targeting Venezuela just because its leader is an undemocratic election-stealing wanker. It's actually rare for Trump not to get on with such leaders. It's basically oil. Now, there's a sense in which you may be thinking, no shit, Sherlock, he's just seized an oil tanker. What put you onto that, eh? And of course, an oil tanker's got nothing to do with drug running. And you can probably put any American dodgy behaviour in the world down to the lust for oil and not be far off the mark. And you'd be right. But do you know why exactly? And do you know how to connect this to Trump's potential alignment with Russia? Well, credit to Ed Conway of Sky News here. Once again, he's been earning his crust with his usual insights. So it comes down to this. America is a huge producer of oil, and Venezuela isn't. In fact, the USA is now producing more oil than any country ever has in history. Venezuela isn't challenging America's global share of oil production. So why is the USA interested in Venezuelan oil? Well, as Conway explains, it comes down to types of oil. Oil extracted from the ground has to be processed in refineries. We know about this. We learned about it at school. Some of us are remembered. But you can't just feed crude oil into a refinery and expect to get anything useful out of it at the other end. Different refineries are designed to process different types of crude oil. Most of America's largest and therefore most lucrative refineries are clustered around the southern states and process heavy crude. But America doesn't produce much heavy crude. In fact, the massive explosion in oil excavation in the USA in recent years has been light crude from fracking. No good for those refineries if they want to stay in business. And they do want to stay in business, and the US government wants them to stay in business. As Conway points out, it's an expensive business letting huge refineries just diminish and then building new ones to process different types of oil just because your supplies have changed. Much cheaper just to secure more supplies than to rebuild your processing infrastructure. So they need to import heavy crudes to keep those refineries in business. But one problem appears to be that they've been having to import more and more heavy crude. In Conway's report, he shows that it has gone from 12% of oil imports to 70%. This means that although the USA could be making plenty of dosh from the refining of this oil, some other countries reaping the economic benefits of producing it. Importing is a cost to a country when weighing economic matters, and it also creates dependencies. The USA likes being self-reliant where it can, and Trump is particularly keen on this. Especially if you plan on being a dick to the world, it does you no favours to also be reliant on the world for something you really, really want. But the USA just doesn't have the reserves of heavy crude itself. So who does? Well, no prizes for guessing Venezuela is one of them. It's sitting on a huge reserve of heavy crude, but not producing many barrels of it. So, and this is where we go into a little bit of speculation beyond the Sky report here, I'm going to suggest that Trump would prefer Venezuela to pump out more barrels of heavy crude for a couple of reasons. First, because if the supply of heavy crude increased, it could be imported at lower cost. Second, you increase your number of viable suppliers for when you're being a dick to some of the others. And there are only so many countries with large reserves of heavy crude, and Trump could easily piss all of them off on the same day if he's having a bad one. Conway pointed to Russia and Canada as having significant reserves, although you look at it and Saudi Arabia's got a fair amount too. They're not posing a problem to America's plans. Also Iraq and China, which sort of explains what the second Iraq war was about if you hadn't cottoned on by now. But Russia holding some reserves sort of explains why Trump wants to normalise economic relations with Russia. beyond theories about videos of golden showers or a copy of the Epstein files in the Kremlin. The current sanctions must be making it difficult for the USA to secure adequate supplies of heavy crude to feed those really important refineries in Republican voting states in the South. In fact, very difficult, as the USA is not supposed to be buying oil from Russia at all. Recently, Trump has been making an issue out of anyone buying it. This was exactly the problem with Iraq. Those sanctions were a problem for Bush from an oil tycoon family, because applying oil sanctions against a country which has reserves of a type of oil your family really wants makes things morally ambiguous. And what's the best way to lift sanctions against a country that won't play ball? Bomb the crap out of it until the reason for the sanctions no longer exists. Only Trump has applied a different twist to this strategy. Let the country bomb the crap out of their neighbours until there's nothing worth fighting over and you can just call the whole thing quits. Which just leaves Canada. But Trump is having a trade tussle with Canada, and the thing about having to have a trade war with someone is you'd really rather not be utterly reliant on them for a super vital import if you can help it. If Trump didn't already realise this, China certainly taught him. He tried to ramp up an epic trade war with China, only to discover that his precious tech companies were reliant on rare earth minerals, mostly mined and overwhelmingly processed in China. Trump done goofed, had to chicken out of the trade war, and has now had to let China buy a load of previously export blocked high-grade chips, which they're going to use to make advanced military hardware, which is going to threaten US interests in the Pacific in the coming years. Another triumph for the orange one there. So it seems to come down to this. There are huge oil refineries in Republican states, no doubt providing lots of vital jobs, raising lots of vital taxes, and of course, lots of vital oil money for the donation coffers as well. They want reliable and cheap access to heavy crude. Venezuela is sitting on shit tons of it, but they're not pumping much of it out. If only the Venezuelan government would produce more of it. Or better still, just let some American-based oil companies do it for them. I know, let's bomb the government until it changes to one who will play ball. Or maybe it is about drugs and the fact that regime change in Venezuela might help a major industry in Republican states is just a coincidence. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Please subscribe to the channel for more content. Click the bell notification icon so you know when new videos are coming out. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.